so sternly that even Pridmore was a little frightened. "His Majesty's palace is in this direction." He walked away, and Matilda made a sudden jump, dragged her hand out of Pridmore's, and ran after him. So Pridmore had to follow, still grumbling. The palace stood in a great green park, dotted with white-flowered may bushes. It was not at all like an English palace, St. James's or Buckingham Palace, for instance, because it was very beautiful and very clean. When they got in, they saw that the palace was hung with green silk. The footmen had green and gold liveries, and all the courtiers' clothes were the same colours. Matilda and Pridmore had to wait a few moments while the King changed his sceptre and put on a clean crown, and then they were shown into the audience chamber. The King came to meet them. "It is kind of you to have come so far," he said. "Of course you'll stay at the palace." He looked anxiously at Matilda. "Are you quite comfortable, my dear?" he asked doubtfully. Matilda was very truthful, for a girl. "No," she said, "my frock cuts me round the arms." "Ah," said he, "and you brought no luggage. Some of the Princess's frocks, her old ones perhaps. Yes, yes, this person, your maid, no doubt." A loud laugh rang suddenly through the hall. The King looked uneasily round, as though he expected something to happen. But nothing seemed likely to occur. "Yes," said Matilda, "Pridmore is— Oh dear!" For before her eyes she saw an awful change taking place in Pridmore. In an instant all that was left of the original Pridmore were the boots and the hem of her skirt. The top part of her had changed into painted iron and glass, and even as Matilda looked, the bit of skirt that was left got flat and hard and square. The 2 feet turned into 4 feet, and they were iron feet, and there was no more Pridmore. "Oh, my poor child," said the King, "your maid has turned into an automatic machine." It was too true. The maid had turned into a machine such as those which you see in a railway station, greedy, grasping things which take your pennies and give you next to nothing in chocolate, and no change. But there was no chocolate to be seen through the glass of the machine that once had been Pridmore, only little rolls of paper. The King silently handed some pennies to Matilda. She dropped one into the machine and pulled out the little drawer. There was a scroll of paper. Matilda opened it and read, "Don't be tiresome." She tried again. This time it was, "If you don't give over, I'll tell your ma first thing when she comes home." The next was, "Go along with you, do. Always worrying." So then Matilda knew. "Yes," said the King sadly, "I fear there's no doubt about it. Your maid has turned into an automatic nagging machine. Never mind, my dear, she'll be all right to-morrow." "I like her best like this, thank you," said Matilda quickly. "I needn't put in any more pennies, you see." "Oh, we mustn't be unkind and neglectful," said the King gently, and he dropped in a penny. He got, "You tiresome boy, you, leave me be this minute." "I can't help it," said the King wearily. "You've no idea how suddenly things change here. It's because— But I'll tell you all about it at tea time. Go with nurse now, my dear, and see if any of the Princess's frocks will fit you." Then a nice, kind, cuddly nurse led Matilda away to the Princess's apartments, and took off the stiff frock that hurt, and put on a green silk gown, as soft as birds' breasts, and Matilda kissed her for sheer joy at being so comfortable. "And now, dearie," said the nurse, "you'd like to see the Princess, wouldn't you? Take care you don't hurt yourself with her, she's rather sharp." Matilda did not understand this then. Afterwards she did. The nurse took her through many marble corridors and up and down many marble steps, and at last they came to a garden full of white roses, and in the middle of it, on a green satin-covered eiderdown as big as a feather bed, sat the Princess in a white gown. She got up when Matilda came towards her, and it was like seeing 1.5 yards of white tape stand up on one end and bow. 1.5 yards of broad white tape, of course, but what is considered broad for tape is very narrow indeed for princesses. "How are you?" said Matilda, who had been taught manners. "Very slim indeed, thank you," said the Princess, and she was. Her face was so white and thin that it looked as though it were made of an oyster shell. Her hands were thin and white, and her fingers reminded Matilda of fish bones. Her hair and eyes were black, and Matilda thought she might have been pretty if she had been fatter. When she shook hands with Matilda, her bony fingers hurt quite hard. The Princess seemed pleased to see her visitor, and invited her to sit with Her Highness on the satin cushion. "I have to be very careful, or I should break," said she. "That's why the cushion is so soft, and I can't play many games for fear of accidents. Do you know any sitting down games?" The only thing Matilda could think of was cat's cradle, so they played that with the Princess's green hair ribbon. Her fish-bony fingers were much cleverer than Matilda's little fat pink paws. Matilda looked about her between the games, and admired everything very much, and asked questions, of course. There was a very large bird chained to a perch in the middle of a very large cage. Indeed, the cage was so big that it took up all one side of the rose garden. The bird had a yellow crest like a cockatoo, and a very large bill like a toucan. If you do not know what a toucan is, you do not deserve ever to go to the Zoological Gardens again. "What is that bird?" asked Matilda. "Oh," said the Princess, "that's my pet Cockatoucan. He's very valuable. If he were to die or to be stolen, the Greenland would wither up and grow like New Cross or Islington." "How horrible!" said Matilda. "I've never been to those places, of course," said the Princess, shuddering, "but I hope I know my geography." "All of it?" asked Matilda. "Even the exports and imports," said the Princess. "Good-bye. I'm so thin I have to rest a good deal, or I should wear myself out. Nurse, take her away." So Nurse took her away to a wonderful room, where she amused herself until tea-time with all the kinds of toys that you see and want in the shop when someone is buying you a box of bricks or a puzzle map, the kind of toys you never get because they are so expensive. Matilda had tea with the King. He was full of true politeness, and treated Matilda exactly as though she had been grown up, so that she was extremely happy and behaved beautifully. The King told her all his troubles. "You see," he began, "what a pretty place my Greenland was once. It has points even now, but things aren't what they used to be. It's that bird, that Cockatoucan. We daren't kill it or give it away, and every time it laughs something changes. Look at my Prime Minister. He was a 6-foot man, and look at him now. I could lift him with one hand. And then your poor maid. It's all that bad bird." "Why does it laugh?" asked Matilda. "I can't think," said the King. "I can't see anything to laugh at." "Can't you give it lessons, or something nasty to make it miserable?" "I have, I do, I assure you, my dear child. The lessons that bird has to swallow would choke a professor." "Does it eat anything else besides lessons?" "Christmas pudding. But there, what's the use of talking? That bird would laugh if it were fed on dog biscuits." His Majesty sighed and passed the buttered toast. "You can't possibly," he went on, "have any idea of the kind of things that happen. That bird laughed one day at a cabinet council, and all my ministers turned into little boys in yellow socks, and we can't get any laws made till they come right again. It's not their fault, and I must keep their situations open for them, of course, poor things." "Of course," said Matilda. "There was a dragon now," said the King. "When he came I offered the Princess's hand and half my kingdom to anyone who would kill him. It's an offer that is always made, you know." "Yes," said Matilda. "Well, a really respectable young prince came along, and everyone turned out to see him fight the dragon. As much as 9 pence each was paid for the front seats, I assure you. The trumpet sounded, and the dragon came hurrying up. A trumpet is like a dinner bell to a dragon, you know. And the prince drew his bright sword, and we all shouted, and then that wretched bird laughed, and the dragon turned into a pussy-cat, and the prince killed it before he could stop himself. The populace was furious." "What happened then?" asked Matilda. "Well, I did what I could. I said, 'You shall marry the Princess just the same.' So I brought the Prince home, and when we got there the Cockatoucan had just been laughing